y'all! You submitted questions on Instagram, Facebook, and even some here on YouTube, and today I'm going to answer them. I have 21 questions, but only 20 answers, and you'll understand that at the end of this video. The first question is, if you could go anywhere for a dream vacation, where would it be? Anybody who follows me on Facebook knows the answer to this, and that is Ireland. I just love everything about Ireland. The food, the people, the landscape. Now, I probably wouldn't go there to go to Dublin because it's a city and it's crowded. If I'm going to Ireland, I'm going to the country. What book or books do you think drove you to be a writer? I wouldn't say any books actually drove me to be a writer. I always loved reading and I've always written stories. Even when I was a little kid, I wrote silly stories about animals. So I really wouldn't say that a book or books drove me to be a writer. It's just the love of books in general. What was your reason for self-publishing? This answer actually has changed over the years. Originally, I was too terrified to try traditional publishing because I didn't think I was good enough. But now I wouldn't do anything but self-publishing. And that's because I enjoy having the control and the freedom to do what I want with my books. Now, it's not to say that traditionally published authors don't have some control over their books, because they do. But in the end, the publisher has a lot of say. And I don't think I could give up that kind of control over my books. Who was one of your biggest influences to write? This one is an easy answer. My 7th grade English teacher, Mrs. Frigetta, was the biggest support in my writing that I have ever had. She was the one that encouraged me to begin writing when I wrote a short story for class. She was the one that read my stories at the beginning. She was the one that gave me critiques. She was always there for me when I needed her. And if I see her out and about or at our local festival in my hometown, I always talk to her and she's always there if I need to bounce ideas. She will always be somebody that I keep in the back of my mind when I write. And I love that her voice is in the back of my brain because it helps me to continue, it helps me to realize where my weaknesses are, and she'll always be a big influence on my writing. In fact, I even dedicated one of my books to her. Is there a genre you won't read or write? This is a 2-part answer. I will not read middle grade books, and it's only because I don't really enjoy them. They're not targeted to me, and it's not saying I couldn't read them if I wanted to, but there's not enough meat to them for my liking. What I wouldn't write is fantasy. Now, I'm not talking about simple fantasies or cursed objects or anything like that. I'm talking about fantasies like Lord of the Rings or Pierce Anthony's books. You know, fantasies that involve so much. I would get lost if I tried to write one of those books. I commend authors who write fantasies. Who is one of your one-click authors? Somebody who you ordered their book without even looking at the synopsis. Well, besides Lynn Howard, who actually asked this question, I would have to say that my one-click author is Dorinda Jones. She has an amazing book. She is a brilliant writer, and I hope she never quits because I will read everything she writes. How do you feel you've grown as an author since your first book? I have grown a lot since my first book. My very, very first book, which is not actually available anymore, was called A Mother's Day Murder, and it was a mess. It got published. Obviously, that was because it was a fraud company, but as much as I love the story, it was a mess. It needed a lot of work, and it was so short. I don't even know why anybody ever read it personally. Since then, I've written 10 books and several short stories. And I wouldn't say that they all need improvement, although there are parts that could be improved upon. I wouldn't say they all are horrible. I mean, nothing's ever perfect. But I do think that I have grown quite a bit as an author. I've gotten better at description. I've gotten better at pacing, although that's still my weakness. I think I've gotten better all around. But as I said, there's always room for improvement. No matter how experienced you are, no matter how many books you write, there is always room for improvement. The next question is kind of a continuation of the last one. Would you ever want to go back and rewrite any of your earlier works? The answer to that is a definite yes. I used to want to rewrite my Naughty North Pole novels, But I think that the one that I would really want to go back and write and actually finish the series is Catching a Cardinal. Now, this is not available anymore, and there's reasons for that. The main reason being I rushed it. I did not feel it should have gone to publication, and that's my own fault. That's why I pulled it from all outlets. Now, someday I may go back and rewrite it. It was a series I was really excited about. It was my Birds of Paradise series, and it's a little play on words, you know, Birds of Paradise flower, but these were a group of secret operatives. And I'd love to go back and rewrite the first book and finish the whole series. I really would. Whether that's going to happen one day or not, we'll have to wait and see. What is the hardest part of the writing process for you? As I mentioned, my pacing is off. I tend to rush my stories, and then the editing process is just terrible because there's so much I have to add in the editing process. I really need to get better at pacing. The beginning and the end are the easiest parts for me. It's the middle that's the difficult part. Trying to put as much as possible in the story without sounding boring or without giving too much information is a challenge. And it's a challenge for every author, but that's the part that I feel I need improvement on. The beginning and the end I usually have in my head before I ever even start a story. What is something about you that is unique? I wouldn't necessarily call it unique, but in case you haven't noticed, I don't wear a single iota of makeup. I wouldn't call that unique, but it is something you don't see very often lately. It's not that I have anything against makeup, I just feel that I look better without it and I feel uncomfortable wearing it. So it's my decision not to wear makeup. Personally, I think every woman out there, and every man even, looks better without makeup. But if it's your prerogative, feel free to wear it. The next question is, what is something you do while writing that might surprise people? I'm not entirely sure if this would really surprise people, but it actually is something that you might not realize that authors do, and that is use actual physical dictionaries, thesauruses, and encyclopedias. Now, I don't have a lot of space, so I can't have encyclopedias. So there's a little wiggle room on that. I do use the internet for that, and I do use the internet for other things as well, but there's nothing like pulling down a dictionary from a shelf and looking up the word you're trying to think of. Physical books are so much better than a computer screen. How many words should a novel be? This is an answer that is not simple. It's going to depend on your story. It's going to depend on your genre. It's going to depend on your personal preference. Now, if you're self-publishing, you don't really have to worry too much about word count. Yes, they say 50,000 words makes a novel, but it's not necessarily required. If you're self-publishing, publish it the way you want. For traditional publishing, you're going to have to look at the publishers you have in mind and see what their requirements are for certain genres. What is the best way to get rid of writer's block? This is also an answer that is not simple. Writer's block is different for everybody. Whatever it is that can get you out of your head and back into your story, that's what you do. Whether it is watching television, playing a video game, going for a walk outside, taking a day off. Yes, it's procrastination, but sometimes you just have to do it. Take that day off if it's going to mean you can get back into your story the next day. Whatever you can do to relax. Big key word there, relax. Whatever it is that relaxes you is what's going to help you get out of your writer's block. I mentioned in my last video that I had a hard time for quite a few years with writer's block, and there wasn't really one thing that could get me out of it. I did everything I enjoyed, everything that I could think to relax, and it didn't really work. Mostly what happened with that one was I was in my head. There was so much else going on in my life that my writing just took a back burner, and I will never allow that to happen again because it was like part of me was missing, and I hated that feeling. My biggest advice for anybody who has a block: take it slow. Don't try to rush yourself. Don't give yourself deadlines. Just sit down and enjoy your story. Somebody asked, I want to write a book, where do I start? There's no real one way to start. Whatever kind of inspiration comes to you is where you should start. I have started books with titles and nothing more. I have started books with a line and nothing more. I have started books with a character's hair color and nothing more. There's no one place to start with writing a book. My biggest advice, if you were trying to figure out how to start a book and you're just having trouble, pick your genre and run with it. Do the research on your genre and follow that formula. Now, it's not necessarily saying you have to follow that formula, but that might help loosen some of the ideas in your mind. If you're going to go with romance, research romance. And yes, you need to research romance. It is not straightforward. It's not just a love story. It's not just two people getting together and saying, I love you. You need to do your research, even with romance. If you want to do a fantasy, research fantasies, watch some YouTube videos from other fantasy authors, and start writing things down. Get a journal, get a notebook, use your laptop, whatever it is, start writing down notes. And research, research, research. How do you know how to separate a scene's point of view? Now, this depends on what point of view you're writing in. If you're writing in an omniscient point of view, you're not going to have to worry too much about separating point of views. Omniscient means you're writing the story in every character's head. The reader is experiencing the story through every single character at once. So it's going to be acceptable, slightly acceptable, to head hop in this case. In other cases where it's not an omniscient point of view, if it's a first person, a third person, what have you, you're not going to want to do too much head hopping. Yes, you could separate half a chapter in one person's head and then another half a chapter in another person's head. But in all honesty, you want to try to stick to one or two and not switch back and forth too often. Don't have one paragraph in your heroine's point of view and then have the second paragraph in your hero's point of view and then go back to your heroine. It's just too confusing for the reader. What is your least favorite romance trope? I don't really necessarily believe in tropes, but in the basis of what you're asking, I would have to say my least favorite is any kind of BDSM or anything where the character is doing something against their will. It makes me very uncomfortable and it's just something I don't read. Going along with that, somebody asked, what is your favorite romance trope? This one isn't somewhat easy answer and a somewhat difficult answer. I have a lot of favorite ones, but the first one that comes to mind is people from the past, whether that be a best friend, somebody that you had a crush on in high school and didn't have a chance to be with, and then they come through in your adult life, things like that. Anybody who that was in the character's past and returns to their present, I love those stories. My second option would be enemies to lovers. Love enemies to lovers. What's your favorite trope? Who is your favorite book character? Now, the person who asked this question didn't specify whether they mean my books or other books, so I'm going to answer this in two parts. With my books, my favorite character has got to be Ellie from The Shift. She is so complex and there's just so much about her that I love. I love that she has two dads. I love that her birth was unconventional. I love that she ends up mating with somebody a bit older than her. And I love her connection with the other characters. If you haven't read The Shift, I'd like to give it a try. Go to Amazon. I will leave the link in the description and give it a shot. For other people's books, this goes back to Dorinda Jones. Dorinda Jones has a series of Grim Reaper books, and the character's name is Charlie Davidson. I love Charlie. She is a coffee fanatic. She has all these little quips. She has quirks. She is amazing. If you have not checked out Charlie Davidson and the Grim Reaper series by Dorinda Jones, do it. I will leave that link in the description as well, because everybody in the world needs to read these books. Whether you like romance, whether you like paranormal, whether you like women characters, I don't care. You need to read these books. Do you prefer paperback or ebook? Look, I have nothing against ebooks. They're convenient. You can have a million books on your ebook reader or your phone and take them with you wherever you want to go. I have nothing against ebooks, but personally, there is nothing like reading a physical book. Paperback or hardcover, I don't care. There is nothing like reading a physical book. And I'm not like other people who worry about dog-earing pages. I know, blasphemy. Or bending the spine. Because personally, I feel like the more a book is tattered, the more evidence you see that somebody read the book, the more that story was loved. Read the books, bend the spines, dog-ear the pages. As long as it's your book, don't do this with anybody else's book. Do it the way you want. Love that book, and if it has to go in the trash when you're done and can't be donated, throw it in the trash and buy another copy. Lastly is, how do you overcome doubt? Sorry, viewer, but you don't. Doubt is always going to be there as an author. No matter what you do, no matter how many techniques you use, you're always going to have doubt that you're not good enough, because that's what comes with creativity. It's not just authors. Artists, painters, sculptors, they all are going to have doubt for their entire careers, because that's just what comes with creativity. You can love it to death, and other people just might not. And that's okay, because we're not here to please everybody. We're here to please ourselves. We're here to do what we love and hope other people love it too. That was all the 20 questions I was going to answer. I said in the beginning of this video I had 21 questions, but I was only going to answer 20. And the reason for this is because I got a question: what do you do when you're not writing? That is such a loaded answer that I decided I'm going to save it for a future vlog. I will actually show you what I do when I'm not writing, and it's a lot. So it's going to probably be a week-long vlog, and I will post it probably on a Thursday, just to give time to actually show my whole week. I hope that it would be something you're going to enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this Q&A, and if you did not get your questions answered, or you would have other questions that might come up, feel free to join Lynn Howard and I on October 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central for a live writing sprint Q&A. If you're an author and would like to write with us, feel free to come and write them during our sprint. If you have questions for us, you'll have 2 authors to ask these questions of. So feel free to ask anything you like, and we will both answer them. If it's something I've already answered, I'll still answer it, just because there might be some people on that didn't watch this video. And then Lyndon would also be able to answer your questions as well. So I hope you'll join us on October 6th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central for our first collaborative live. And I hope you'll join me next week, Tuesday and Thursday again, for editing tips and the start of a new author challenge. See you then.